The Galactic Empire prided itself on discipline, order, and strategic dominance. For centuries, it had absorbed countless species into its ever-expanding military, refining its warriors into an efficient, near-invincible force. Every soldier was trained to a strict doctrine: precision over brutality, calculated strikes over reckless aggression. Among them, the Imperial Legion stood above all, an elite brotherhood of the most capable fighters in the Empire's history. When Earth was inducted into the Empire, skepticism ran rampant. Humans were primitive by most galactic standards, their wars chaotic and unrefined. They fought with desperation rather than grace, with raw violence rather than tactical efficiency. Yet, despite these flaws, one had been deemed worthy of the Legion's ranks: Captain Elias Kane. Kane's arrival at the Imperial training facility was met with hushed conversations and wary glances. He was neither towering nor physically intimidating, certainly not by the standards of the Drask, whose bodies were sheathed in natural armor, nor the Vari, whose psychic prowess made them formidable opponents. He lacked the forearms of the Zalari, whose speed in battle was unmatched, and he bore no genetic enhancements like the Vadari, engineered for war at birth. He was, to many, unremarkable, yet there was something unsettling about him. It wasn't his physique, nor his alien nature. It was the way he moved. Every step was measured, every glance calculating. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, but his eyes never stopped scanning, assessing. The seasoned veterans among them recognized the quiet confidence of a man who had seen true war. His assigned commanding officer, General Zervath, observed him in silence before addressing the gathered recruits. A towering figure with deep violet skin and a crest of spiked tendrils, Zervath had led countless campaigns against rogue worlds and insurgent fleets. He was not one to be easily impressed. "This is Captain Elias Kane of Earth," the general announced. "He is the first human to be inducted into the Legion. Treat him as you would any other soldier. If he is unworthy, he will fail." The words carried a veiled challenge, one that did not go unnoticed. Some of the recruits exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from amusement to disdain. Kane remained impassive. The first test was a combat simulation, designed to evaluate individual proficiency in battle. The recruits were deployed into a controlled war zone, their objectives simple: eliminate their opponents and survive. The training grounds shimmered as holographic terrain took shape. Ruined structures, jagged cliffs, and cover points strategically placed to force tactical engagements. Kane's opponents assumed an easy victory. The Drask, massive and lumbering, expected to crush him through sheer brute force. The Vari intended to overwhelm his mind with psionic interference. The Zalari, their four limbs wielding dual weapons with inhuman coordination, believed their speed would be unmatched. The simulation began. Kane vanished from sight almost immediately, moving with an efficiency that defied expectations. He did not rush into combat, as the others did, nor did he seek to prove himself through direct confrontation. Instead, he observed. He let the others fight, watching how they moved, how they reacted under pressure. When he struck, it was with lethal precision. The Drask warrior never saw him coming. Kane used the environment to his advantage, scaling a broken tower with an ease that belied human limitations. He struck from above, a single, well-placed shot disabling the giant's shield generator before a follow-up round landed between its plated armor. The towering alien collapsed before it could comprehend what had happened. The Vari fared no better. Their psychic influence, designed to disrupt an opponent's focus, had little effect on Kane. He did not rely on instinctive responses. He had trained his mind to operate under duress, conditioned through years of brutal warfare where distractions meant death. He closed the distance faster than they anticipated, dispatching them with a ruthless efficiency that left the remaining recruits uneasy. By the time the Zalari engaged him, their numerical advantage had dwindled. They came at him from multiple angles, their twin blades weaving intricate patterns of death. But Kane did not meet them head-on. He anticipated their movements, redirecting their momentum, using their own speed against them. One by one, They fell, their bodies hitting the simulated ground in succession. When the exercise ended, silence filled the arena. Kane stood at the center and scathed. The recruits who had dismissed him now regarded him with a mixture of disbelief and something bordering on unease. Even Zervath, who had seen the rise and fall of countless warriors, narrowed his eyes in contemplation. A soldier approached the general, handing him a data slate. "Sir, we've begun compiling his combat record. The preliminary numbers are unusual." Zervath's brow furrowed. "Unusual how?" The soldier hesitated before answering. "We need time to verify, but if these figures are accurate, Captain Kane's confirmed kill count is unprecedented." The general's gaze flickered toward the human standing before him, calm and composed despite the weight of a dozen alien eyes upon him. He had welcomed this man into the Legion, expecting to mold him into a soldier of the Empire. But now, a troubling thought crept into his mind. Had they just welcomed something far more dangerous? The data slate felt heavier than it should have. General Zervath held it in his clawed hands, his expression unreadable as his sharp eyes scanned the numbers before him. He had seen his fair share of warriors, monsters born for battle, conquerors who had carved their names in a history with blood and fire. Yet nothing had prepared him for what he was looking at now. The numbers were impossible. Across the hall, Elias Kane stood motionless, arms folded, his expression neutral. The recruits who had once scoffed at his presence now gave him a wide berth, some watching with open caution, others with a quiet reverence reserved for something both fascinating and terrifying. He was an anomaly, a predator in their midst, and for the first time, they were beginning to understand just what that meant. Zervath did not look up from the slate as he spoke. "Captain Kane." Kane met his gaze without hesitation. "Sir." The general studied him for a long moment. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he transferred the combat report to the central display. Holographic projections filled the room. Battlefields of Earth, planets ravaged by war, footage extracted from human military archives. It was all there, meticulously recorded. The kill count, a number so vast it dwarfed anything in the Empire's history, hovered ominously at the bottom of the display. The recruits who had gathered to watch the debrief shifted uneasily. Some recoiled. Others stiffened, eyes flicking between Kane and the statistics before them. No single soldier in the Empire had ever amassed such a body count. Even among the Empire's long-lived species, warriors who had fought in campaigns spanning centuries had not approached such figures. And this was a single human. Zervath's voice, when it came, was measured but firm. "We have conducted wars for millennia, Kane. I have personally led campaigns that have shaped entire civilizations. I have seen warriors fight for empire, for honor, for survival." His violet eyes darkened. "But I have never seen anything like this." Kane said nothing. He did not need to. One of the recruits, Zalari, exhaled sharply. "That number can't be real." His voice was tinged with something approaching desperation. No one, not even a human, could kill that many. A second recruit, a Drask, bared his jagged teeth. "Even if the number is real, it is the product of savagery, not skill." His voice carried an edge of disdain, though there was an undercurrent of something else, unease. Humans fight like animals. They lack discipline, precision. Kane's gaze remained unreadable, but when he spoke, his voice was calm, measured. "You think discipline wins wars?" He tilted his head slightly, eyes locked onto the Drask. "Tell me, when you march onto a battlefield, do you fight to prove your technique is superior? Do you treat combat like an art form?" He let the silence stretch before answering for them. "We don't. We fight to end wars." His words hung in the air, sinking into the minds of those listening. Some bristled. Others remained silent. Zervath's gaze never wavered. "These numbers do not come from ordinary battles. They come from extermination campaigns." His tone was neither accusatory nor admiring, merely stating fact. "Explain." Kane exhaled slowly. "Earth's history is filled with war. Not skirmishes, not ritual combat. Wars. We fought them with sticks, then with swords, then with fire, then with machines. We fought over land, over resources, over ideology. We fought because survival demanded it. His voice was steady, but there was something colder in his tone now, something honed over years of carnage. We learned that victory isn't about how cleanly you fight. It's about making sure the other side never gets up again. Zervath regarded him for a long moment. And you? Kane's expression did not change. I did what I was trained to do. The silence stretched, heavy and unspoken. There was no bravado in his words, no pride in his achievements. He spoke as a man who had walked through hell and made peace with it. Another recruit, a VARE, shifted uncomfortably. You're a killer. Kane's gaze flicked to her. We all are. Zervath studied him carefully. There was no mistaking it now. This human was unlike anything they had expected. He was not a soldier trained in the Empire's disciplined warfare, nor was he a reckless berserker who fought without thought. He was something else entirely. A force honed not by military doctrine, but by necessity, by a world where hesitation meant death and war was an unrelenting certainty. The general turned back to the display. There was only one way to confirm what they had seen. Combat trial. His command cut through the murmurs of the recruits. Live engagement. Real targets. He looked back at Kane. No simulations. No controlled exercises. Some of the recruits stiffened. A combat trial of this nature was rare, reserved for proving warriors in the most brutal of conditions. Kane didn't blink. When? Now. The chamber shifted, the training hall dissolving into a new reality. The Empire's technology allowed for entire war zones to be reconstructed in artificial space, and what appeared now was no mere exercise. It was a battlefield. The enemies, taken from the archives of the Empire's greatest threats, were real. Merciless war machines, bioengineered horrors, and elite shock troopers, each chosen for their lethality. Kane was given no further instruction. The others watched from the command platform as the battle began. At first, it seemed impossible. He was outnumbered, outgunned, facing opponents with advantages no human should be able to counter. The enemies converged, weapons raised, claws bared. And then Kane moved. He did not fight like them. He did not follow the Empire's battle formations, did not seek honorable engagements. He fought like a ghost, vanishing between cover, striking before his enemies could react. He used the battlefield itself as a weapon, leading his enemies into kill zones, exploiting their patterns, turning their own strengths into vulnerabilities. There was no hesitation, no wasted motion. Every shot, every strike was calculated, efficient, final. The trial lasted mere minutes. When it ended, Kane stood alone. His enemies lay motionless, the battlefield littered with the bodies of those who had stood against him. The recruits who had doubted him moments before were silent. Even Zervath, who had seen warriors of every kind, felt the weight of what he had just witnessed. The human turned, meeting the general's gaze. Zervath understood now. They had welcomed a soldier into their ranks. But what they had truly accepted into the Empire was something far deadlier. The silence stretched, thick and oppressive. Every recruit, every officer watching from the command platform, struggled to reconcile what they had just witnessed. It wasn't just victory. They had seen warriors claim triumph before. This was something else, something colder, something absolute. Elias Kane stood amidst the wreckage of his trial, his breathing steady, his posture relaxed. To him, this was nothing remarkable. To the Empire, it was a revelation. General Zervath had fought for centuries, had seen champions rise and fall, had led wars that reshaped entire star systems. Yet as he looked down at the human below, he knew instinctively that this man, this lone soldier, was unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. The recruits had no words. Even those who had mocked Kane now regarded him with wary, almost reverent, gazes. Some took a step back without realizing it. Others tried to rationalize what they had seen, as if understanding his methods would make them less terrifying. Zervath turned to his advisors, their expressions mirroring his own unsettled thoughts. The Empire valued order, structure, tradition. Its warriors fought with elegance, with coordination, with carefully measured tactics. But Kane had operated outside those rules. His combat of brutal efficiency, honed by wars the Empire had never considered. One of the officers, a Vieri strategist, exhaled sharply. This is unnatural. No single soldier should be capable of that level of destruction. Another, a Drask battlemaster, folded his arms. Perhaps we made a mistake. Perhaps humans are not meant to serve in the Legion. His tone was careful, but his meaning was clear. Some among them were beginning to see Kane not as an asset, but as a threat. Zervath said nothing for a long moment. His gaze remained locked on the human below, unreadable. Then, in a deliberate motion, he descended from the command platform, his heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber. Kane watched his approach without expression. He did not stand at attention, nor did he display any sign of arrogance or defiance. He simply waited. The general stopped a few paces away. Up close, Zervath towered over him, a warrior forged from generations of imperial warfare. But size, strength, none of it seemed to matter in the presence of this human. "You fight like a force of nature," Zervath said finally, his voice quiet but firm. "You do not hesitate. You do not falter. You do not waste motion on ceremony or tradition." He narrowed his eyes. "Tell me, Kane, what is it that drives a man to become this?" Kane met his gaze, unreadable. Necessity. The word was simple, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 battles. Zervath studied him, searching for something, perhaps weakness, perhaps regret. He found neither. "And if I ordered you to stop? If I deemed you too dangerous to serve in the Legion?" Kane tilted his head slightly. "I follow orders." A pause. "But I survive first." There it was, the unspoken truth that separated him from the Empire's warriors. They fought with honor. Kane fought to live. The difference was subtle, yet vast. Behind them, the recruits and officers waited, the tension palpable. The Empire had spent centuries refining its military doctrine, shaping its warriors into the perfect instruments of war. And now, standing before them, was proof that everything they believed, everything they had built, might not be the pinnacle they thought it was. Zervath's next words carried the weight of finality. "You will not be dismissed." A murmur rippled through the ranks. Some looked relieved, others uneasy. Kane said nothing. He had expected this outcome the moment he stepped onto the battlefield. He did not gloat, did not smirk or revel in the moment. This was simply the next step. "But," the general continued, his gaze sharpening, "you will not serve as a standard soldier. Your methods are incompatible with the structure of the Legion." He glanced toward his officers, some of whom still looked unconvinced. "However, they are not without merit." A new kind of tension filled the air. Something unspoken, something dangerous. "We will study your tactics," Zervath said. "We will learn from them." His tone darkened. "And we will determine whether humanity is an anomaly or a necessity." Kane nodded. He had no illusions about what this meant. He was not being welcomed. He was being observed, analyzed, tested. The Empire was not yet certain whether he was an asset or a mistake. That was fine. Let them watch. Zervath stepped back. "For now, you will be assigned to special operations, missions that require unconventional methods." His expression remained unreadable. "We will see if your ways have a place in the Empire." A slow nod. "Understood." The general turned, his gaze sweeping over the gathered recruits. Dismissed. As the crowd began to disperse, Kane remained still, watching the movement around him with the same quiet intensity he always had. He could feel their eyes on him, their unspoken questions, their lingering doubts. Some saw him as a weapon to be unleashed, others as a danger to be controlled. He had seen it all before. As he exited the training hall, he found himself walking alongside Zervath. The general's stride was measured, his expression contemplative. After a moment, he spoke. "Tell me something, Kane." The human glanced at him. "Your world's wars, they shaped you, forged you into what you are." Zervath's gaze was unreadable. "If the Empire had found Earth centuries earlier, if we had guided your kind before you became this, do you think you would have been better for it?" Kane considered the question. Then, after a long pause, he shook his head. "No," he said simply. Zervath exhaled slowly. He had expected that answer. He wasn't sure if it comforted him or disturbed him. They walked in silence. For the first time in his long life, the general was left wondering if the Empire had truly found an ally in humanity, or if they had just invited something far worse into their ranks.